Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by developing yourself, developing your skills, your habits, your network, and more. My name is Aaron Hayslip, and today I am joined by our co-host, Peter Elbaum, for our monthly check-in, where him and I kind of shoot the breeze on all the things that are happening in the industry and in our own lives. Today, we're going to be tackling a few big topics, one of them being the death of one of my companies, devMint, which was a boot camp to teach people how to become Web3 developers. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about the current state of the economy and how it is or is not affecting bootcamp grads. And we're talking about goal setting. So how do you set goals for the new year and take action? How do you not just try and spend all of your time learning new things, but how do you actually start doing new things? So hope you enjoy. All right. So we're back for our, I think it's a monthly. I never know. Every single episode I start with, I don't know how often we do this. Thankfully lately, Jamie, who's my assistant, has been scheduling these recordings for us. So I've got a few, I guess, updates we can talk through. And, one of the things I think we should get to that you mentioned, Peter, thankfully for me, is to talk through like New Year's resolution stuff, since the new year is upon us.
Yeah.
I also wanted to hit on an episode that just came out recently for me, which was kind of like what's the prognosis for bootcamp grads in a quote economic downturn.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can talk through some lessons learned on sort of like the business side of things for me. The death of devMint, my Web3 bootcamp. I say death lightly because I think there's some things that we're going to do, but more or less the death of like the original model.
Yeah.
Where should we start? Or anything you want to update on?
Yeah. No, I mean, I've probably mentioned this in the past, but the fall for me has mostly been trying to figure out the correct balance of activities. And I'm still trying to figure that out, which unfortunately doesn't mean I have a whole lot to talk about here, but still freelancing, still loving it, still very happy to be independent. And hopefully we'll have more to talk about in the new year as far as like my own projects go.
Cool. You still have the time, you feel like?
Yeah, I'm fairly. Also, I'm like, I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole because I said I didn't have anything to talk about. But one thing I have been thinking about a little bit is I'm honestly not sure if like starting a company or whatever is actually the right call for me. Because when I think about like the whole reason I got excited by indie hackers way back in the day, 4 or 5 years ago, I think I was more excited about the quality of those people's lives. And I've already achieved a lot of that. And so the reality is I'm finding it hard to motivate to like build a SaaS from scratch or whatever the idea ends up being, because I'm already independent. I already have control of my time. I'm already making a living. And so to me, like the whole point of like becoming an indie hacker would be to have those things. And I've already got them. So I'm just struggling to figure out like, well, now what do I do? And maybe it's just what I'm doing.
So you don't want to become mega wealthy, or do you, that's sort of a real question. And maybe not. And maybe you realize that, or maybe you just feel like the odds are stacked against you to become mega wealthy.
Well, the reality is if you go on Indie Hackers, for example, and you filter by people that are making over $1,000 a month, it's very few relative to how many products are in their product directory. And so I think the reality of making money with a software product is super difficult.
Yeah.
And I think very few of them end up making tons and tons of money. Like, of course, the people they interview on their podcast are the ones that are making 30K a month, 40K a month. But at the end of the day, for me, it wouldn't change my day to day. Because like I said, I'm already doing what I want to be doing. I have control of my time. That's really was the goal. And so do I need to go through all that? Probably not at this point. It might be fun. Like I've always liked the idea of having an app that was spitting off cash, but I think as I'm getting into this journey, getting down to it, the reality is I'm not sure I want to actually put the effort into making that a reality, especially because a lot of them fail. So that's kind of where my head's at.
Yeah, man, I think it's a great realization. Because I think that's something that people don't talk about a lot, which is, yeah, you don't want to trade hours for dollars, but and that might segue really well into mine.
Yeah.
But at some point, whenever you're not making any money and you're putting all these hours into it, you have to think about like what are the odds of success, right? Like, what are the chances that I actually get to this place where this trade-off right now makes sense for the trade-off in the future? Because I think that's what we're ultimately talking about is like if you're gonna build your own company, whether it's a SaaS product or not, in the beginning, no one's paying you, so you're working
Right.
for free.
Hmm.
But the bet is that this will pay off. And depending on what you're starting, usually that's it doesn't happen. And so like if you feel like the odds are stacked against you, so like if you really wanted to do this, by the way, like if you really wanted to like build a business that made you a lot of money, obviously you'd start like a service business because that's like you can instantly start selling your services for money. A SaaS business is probably going to be near the top of like the hardest kind to build.
Right.
So that makes sense, man. Um, Anything else on that point before I talk about I guess the death of devMint?
No, let's go ahead and get into devMint.
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick. So backstory, in the crypto craziness that was 2021, my friend Brian and I had this great idea to build like a Web3 bootcamp, which was like, hey, that shouldn't be too hard. I've built lots of bootcamps before. We could just do exactly what we're doing with Parsity, but with Web3, take senior level developers, train them in Web3, and then place them. And our primary way we were going to earn money was placing them at jobs, and those companies would give us kickback. So we started our first cohort, and actually went really well. I mean, Brian was like a genius content creator, built an amazing course, and we had a handful of graduates. A few problems. One of the problems was all those graduates wanted to start their own company, which is great for them. And bless them. And I think Brian right now is even like mentoring them through that process. But it means that we just don't get any of that revenue. I mean, they paid a small fee for us to do the program, but I feel like Brian like poured out so much of himself mentoring that there's no way that like that paid for it. I think that was one of the things. But I think really what I'm looking back on is like, what are the lessons learned for me about, because I think, maybe unlike you, I'm not sure. I get a kick out of like starting businesses. And I think I want to figure out a way in my life where I can do that more often, like
Hmm.
learn more about business and do it more. And so for me, I'm trying to like amass some principles of like what makes for a good business or what things should you do or not do. And one of those is like one of my life principles is like, don't try to time the market, right? Like when it comes to like investing or stepping into a new career. This also is going to segue into my market analysis, but is like, don't try to time the market. And I think if I'm honest with myself about the crypto stuff, it was a total like timing the market thing. Whereas like you don't realize you're in the bubble you're in until like you're out of it because especially with like the economic boom that had been happening for the last like however many years, like I can't remember a time in my life where like the greater economy mattered to me that it
Yeah.
wasn't good. You know what I mean? Like when I graduated college, it was kind of crappy, but like, I had a religious studies degree, so I wasn't really looking for like a good job anyway. So like, just didn't make. I just didn't care that
Right.
the economy was in the toilet because it didn't affect me. I think it affected my parents, but I didn't really like notice it. We didn't talk about it, kind of thing. And so it felt like, oh man, like crypto is insane. It'll always be this valuable. And I do think blockchain technology is crazy valuable. There's so much you could build with it. But as far as like just crypto being a hyped asset, I don't know. I think I built this idea based on that. And then when things fell apart, um, I think there probably is a way to pivot, but I just didn't have the energy. I think I had to think to myself, okay, there's like a negative impact that's happening. Yeah, like we're not losing money because we're not paying salaries, but our time is not free.
Hmm.
So yeah, we sort of said, at least for me, I think Brian's gonna try and like figure out what's next with it. But for me, I was like, I think there's other stuff I could do with my time that would be better use for me. And I just need to take these lessons learned and like not do that again. I still think it's super valuable to become a Web3 developer. I think you should learn how to do that. But is there a market for it? That's like a different question.
Yeah. So would you say, and maybe I'm putting your words in your mouth, but that part of starting it and the model of it was kind of premised upon crypto being really hot at that moment.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I still think it is but I think we're in obviously this market where, you know, the time whenever we started talking about this, like Bitcoin was like at 60,000. Now it's at like 17, and that's like a good explanation of what's happened overall. And then you've got like stuff like FTX collapsed, which isn't a crypto thing, but everyone feels like it's a crypto thing. It's a broader like um, business scheme kind of criminal activity thing than it is a crypto thing.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think that's more or less it. And then I think also at the time probably supported based off of the prices of crypto assets. Companies were paying a ton for Web3 developers. They were just sort of desperate for them, and there's so much venture capital investment now. Some of those VCs have completely gone under.
Right.
So I think those are just not propped up anymore. So we were starting to like see companies who wanted to hire Web3 developers who were still wanting to hire, but no longer willing to pay like a fee or that large of a fee. So I just think things shifted, and like you just can't build a business model based off of. Now I think like if this had been like for example, Parsity is relatively unchanged, right? Whether like the economy's good or bad, because software engineering in general, like it's not going away. You know what I mean? Like Meta might be affected or something like that, but like it's not going away. People are going to become software engineers, etc. But
Right.
it's not like this hyped industry that's super niche like crypto is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. But I do think, on the other hand, segueing into the piece on the software industry, one point I think I made on this podcast that I'm curious what you think about, Peter, is that, when we talk about inflation, we're not just talking about like the power of the dollar. We're also talking about like, hey, literal companies got inflated, right? Like they got extra money that they wouldn't normally get, and they got extra buying power they shouldn't normally have. Cash got cheaper than it normally would be because of interest rates. And so like, when you see like companies like Meta laying off a bunch of people, it's not necessarily because like Facebook's going out of business or software engineering is down or the internet's crashing. Like none of those things are happening. It's because they're burning off excess, to show a larger profit. And unfortunately, people just get burned in the wake of that.
Hmm.
But if your thesis going into this of this process of becoming a software engineer was, in the long run this will be better for me, I'll make more money, have a better life, I'll enjoy building stuff, I love tech, like you shouldn't change your course of action, right? Same thing like with my revelation of devMint was like, don't time the market, like, right?
Right.
Don't try to get into software engineering because the market's good, but don't exit it if you feel like the market's bad, because one, that's probably just a perceived um, truth that's not actually true right now. Like the market for software engineers is still really great. It's just that some of these big tech companies that got lots of money before like laid them off. Anyways, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think especially with Fang, it's important to contextualize that they're publicly traded, and so they're under pressure from their stock price
Yeah,
to do stuff, whatever that is. And so in this case, the market in general is dropping. So their stock price is dropping because the big tech companies make up the majority of the US GDP. And so, or like total market value or whatever, if you get like a growth stock, uh, like portfolio on Vanguard or whatever, the top holdings are always going to be Facebook, Apple, Google, et cetera. And
yeah,
so they're under tremendous pressure to make changes if things are not trending up and to the right. And I think this is just a reflection of that. To your point, if you are set on being a software engineer, then personally wouldn't worry very much about what's going on at those companies, partly because um, we tend to not send graduates in that direction, which I
yeah,
think is great because there's tons of other companies out there that need engineers. And because, yeah, like you said, if are you committed to the path, or are you committed to the market kind of thing? And there's a lot of metaphors for this. One is tourists versus locals. You know, if you're in a vacation spot and there's a hurricane, the tourists get out and the locals kind of batten down the hatches. So it really has to do with your level of conviction in software engineering in general and wanting to be a part of tech. And so I wouldn't personally put too much into it. I kind of don't care about those companies in general from a employment perspective.
Yeah.
From a using their products perspective, that's different. I enjoy YouTube, you know, et cetera. But yeah, I'm not overly concerned.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I'm not crazy. You heard it
Oh,
here. Peter agrees.
yeah.
Um, awesome, man. Well, yeah, I think we could transition to our I guess last topic, which is we've talked about this before. I want to remind you about goal setting. I think you had said something to the extent of like you don't set annual goals, but you think about systems. Was that you or was that me who said that?
Could have been either one of us. I think for me now, I pick very few things that I care about,
Okay.
and I make them so that they're essentially ideally, I'm still learning this lesson, but I don't want it to be the kind of thing where if it's like I miss one thing or I don't hit a certain number, then the whole thing's bad. So it's kind of, for example, I want to see my parents 5 times this year, as opposed to like
Oh,
I
that's right.
want to
Yeah.
like go to the gym every weekday. You miss one weekday, the whole thing feels like it's bust. Whereas with my parents' example, it's like I'm working towards it over time. So that's kind of one thing I've learned. And I pick my priorities. I used to put a million things on there and then never feel like I was making any progress or doing the things I said I wanted to do. So that's kind of me.
Yeah, then that sounds good. I think the perception of progress is important that you at least know you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about this thing called 90 Days of Action. If you go to 90daysofaction.com. And honestly, so it's a thing me and my friend Scott are starting. And the idea is this. And he actually, it came about because he posted on LinkedIn. He said that a mentor once had challenged him to not read any books or listen to podcasts, anything like that. No learning for 90 days, but instead just spend a quarter like executing. And I thought that was a really interesting challenge to like not try and learn stuff because I think the idea here is that we don't normally, if we want to make a change in our life, need more knowledge, right? Like if you want to get fit, like okay, eat less than you burn and go to the gym. Like that's probably pretty much it. You know, like you could get even in the weeds. Like even if you want to get in the weeds on that, like all right, eat you know 3/4 of gram of protein per pound of body weight and burn less calories than you eat, or vice versa. Like all that kind of stuff. Like the knowledge is usually pretty simple in all the things we want to do, but it's the actual like doing. We're scared to like take hold of the hard things that are involved in us actually making progress and doing them. So what if for 90 days we like had a community around doing those things? So for Scott and I in particular, him and I kind of came together. And this is in some ways after the dust settled with devMint because he was involved in devMint also with us. And we said like, hey, what do we want to do like over the next 25 years? Like if you could do anything, what would you do? And we talked about what it would look like for us to just learn how to start businesses or invest in businesses, buy businesses, something like that together. And so the most important thing of being like, let's do something together. And so we identified one business that we want to try and start more or less as a side gig over, in 2023. And we were like, oh crap, this is going to take a lot of work. We don't have a lot of time. So we're gonna have to like do this on the side. How do we do this? I was like, oh, let's just do what you said, right? Let's take a quarter where like we stop reading books. So we're like, we're following Cody Sanchez and Alex Ramosi and all these people on Twitter. And like, we're engaging all their stuff, reading all their books, podcasts, My First Million, right? We're like, we just need to stop all of that and just start doing some stuff. And so that was the idea of, well, what if we brought some other people in with us and put some structure to it where we could like basically just accomplish our goals together. And so the open invitation to folks is for 90 days of action is anybody can sign up. You have to bring an accountability partner. So like the two people have to sign up together. It costs you $500, but we're not making money ideally. Like we don't make any of that money. The $500 is $250 each. And we're going to have weekly check-ins. I'll tell you what those are in a minute. And if you submit every weekly check-in for the 90 days, then your partner gets their $250 back. If your partner submits all of them, you get the money back. So you can't do anything to get the money back other than encourage your partner to actually like do their stuff and vice versa. So ideally, we're not making money off it. We're just having a community trying to do stuff. And the way it works is kind of like with your goal setting, we think through like what are 2 or 3 things, like big outcomes that you want to achieve in the first 90 days. And really maybe just one of them. Like what if just one of them was one that you're actually able to do? And so for me, it's probably something to do with fitness, which is always kind of embarrassing to talk about fitness. And 2, it's something to do with like this business that Scott and I want to start. And so we're going to set up like 2 outcomes, right? Like maybe the business, it's like land our first 5 clients. That'd be an example. And then from there, for each outcome you want to achieve, like what are the commitments, right? Because motivation wanes, right? Willpower, but commitments are something you can stick to. So what are the commitments you're going to commit to? Either these are weekly or daily. So for example, if it's like, hey, I want to lose 15 pounds in 90 days, one of the commitments might be like track all of your macros 6 days a week, right? I'm committed to that. And kind of go back to your version. Like, yeah, if you screw one up, that sucks. But like one of the things we want to talk about is like, well, what do you do whenever you fail? And then we're going to have a weekly check-in where we check in kind of with the community on like what your progress is on these commitments. And then what Scott and I are going to do is, because we're doing this for ourselves, like we're going to, in the Slack community, literally like talk daily, like posts in Slack, because some of these things are sensitive. We don't want to share them, like what our goals are with the whole world. We're going to post like exactly how we're doing, like, did you fulfill your commitment that day? And the idea of being like, all right, screw the rest of the year, if the first 90 days were locked, then would the rest of the year, follow a similar timeline? And then if you're not spending your time reading, listening to podcasts, scrolling your feed on social, which mostly makes you feel stupid because you feel like, oh crap, every time I look at Twitter, oh my gosh, I'm reminded that there's somebody else doing something else that's easier, better, and they make more money than I do. So you get off track just by like looking at Twitter, by the way. And so that's the idea. I'm kind of just giving you like a long blabbing sales pitch on this thing that's going to make us no money. But my selfish reason for getting people into it is like, the more people I have doing it, like the more likely I am to like just do mine. And if nothing else happens, but like I get my outcomes, then that's good. And in fact, I don't want you to fail. I want you to do really well. Then, maybe next year I'll have this long list of people who change their lives, and then I'll charge people $10,000 for it instead of it being free.
It's very cool. And that's a great idea because I like the accountability thing. I like the partner thing. And I like
Yeah.
that there's stakes, but also like plus accountability, kind of a potent combination, right? Because if you were losing your own money, you could maybe say, well, it's just my money, but losing someone else's money, it's like, oh, well, I better do what I said I was going to do. And it's cool. Like, so you guys in theory are going to be using it to do whatever you said you wanted to do. So it's kind of cool that you're creating a business around like another business off of something that's going to help you create a business. So yeah,
And this
cool
is like
idea.
really not necessarily a business because,
Right.
there's no path to revenue. So it's definitely not a business. It's a paid free community.
Yeah. That could be a
um,
business one day.
Yeah, and the idea is like, yeah, whatever you're trying to do that year, like I think everyone's trying to do something significant, right? And that's usually what resolutions are around. You're trying to become somebody else, or be different in some way. And I think there's so many factors that aren't just willpower in that. And so, like, how can we just dive really deep into them? And I think a lot of people who are trying to accomplish these big things, one of the hardest things is like we do it alone, like we like try starting a SaaS company without discussing if it's worth it or not to actually start a SaaS company, or try to lose weight by yourself. And whenever you miss your mark, no one cares. And we're really even trying to like reframe. One thing that Scott has been teaching me a lot is like reframe accountability. Accountability isn't like someone's there to like bust your chops if you don't get it, but a good accountability partner is someone who like really wants that thing for you. Because
Yeah.
suddenly if your friends start accomplishing really cool stuff, you now have a community of people who are very good at XYZ. If Peter, you start like the next big SaaS company, it's like, man, I've got a friend now who I can go to tell me but I know you're not. So maybe this isn't for you. I'm just kidding, but
This is an example.
an example. But yeah, I'll text you later to try to persuade you to join, because
No,
you
I'm actually
haven't.
interested. I need to pick what I want to do. I think that's like the hardest thing. Kind of what I was alluding to is knowing your own desires and knowing like is this something I actually want? Because this is kind of a
Yeah.
rabbit hole, but I feel like with some things people feel like they should want them but actually don't, or want
Yep.
it too much such that they're blocking themselves. Like I think losing weight is like that for a lot of people, where it's like it's become like an identity thing where it's like either I'm not good enough if I don't lose this weight, or why haven't I been able to, or whatever. And it's like almost too like big of a thing in people's
Mm.
minds. Like you said, it's not complicated. It's like it's simple, but it's hard. Um, but it almost can get to this place where it's like, well, I don't even know where to start, even though it's like fairly straightforward. So anyway, I'm rambling, but I think yeah, just like really knowing if you are committed in your heart first is kind of like for
Yeah.
me the place where I need to start.
Well, I would always, maybe like I'd push back a little and say that part of it is like, if you start taking action towards it and realize that like, I don't enjoy this at all. I saw this argument between two like Twitter gods earlier on, like one woman who's like super rich, blah, 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 posted her calendar, which is crazy. And one dude who's supposedly also super rich posted his calendar, and it was like full of like margin. And they were like arguing back and forth on like who is better, right? And it's like, maybe you start off thinking that what you want is time freedom, but what you really want is to do something purposeful, right? But in your case, right, you said, I want time freedom. I don't necessarily need to do something that makes me a ton of money, but it's like through this process of like, all right, I did quit my job, right? Like what you did. I did start getting contract gigs, all that. You realize, well, what's the actual thing that I want? And so that's what I'm hopeful for, is like, I think a lot of people try to research stuff so much
Mm-hmm.
to death, where they try to figure out all the answers to something ahead of time, when it's like, well, sometimes you just need to like get in there and like feel it out. Like, and
Right.
then it exposes, I mean, the same thing with coding, right? Like you need to actually write some code before you actually understand like what part of the thing you don't understand is. But no, that makes sense too. You need to like decide on at least a precursor to that is a hypothesis on what you think you might want.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of my point. But yeah, I totally also resonate with the over researching crowd, because I've been there as well, where it's like, no, just take some action first and you'll learn a lot more that way, typically.
Yeah,
So yeah.
sweet. Well, I've talked a lot. Any other thoughts or updates on this crazy world we live in?
No, I mean, nothing major for me. I think if anything, just having talked to you a little bit today, I feel like I need to take some time and think and maybe revise some of the ways I've been thinking. And also, I'd love to like pick something for 90 days of action. And because I frankly I've never started the new year strong. I can't think of a new year where I was like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, the goals like went exactly the way I thought they would. Maybe on a few things. Like in 2021, I decided to post weekly to YouTube, like one video a week, and I did that. Outside of that, I can't think of anything where I've actually followed all the way through. So it's a cool idea, and yeah,
Well,
definitely
and
sounds
that's,
like fun.
yeah, for sure, man. And that's part of it. Like, we're trying to in the beginning, at least, like sort of coach each other on, this exact topic of like, all right, what makes for an outcome that's good? Like, how do you know that it aligns with like what you want or not?
Hmm.
And I think part of that's like knowing what your values are, and then being open to those values changing, and then like kind of looking at your goals. So I think plenty of us are guilty, probably you and I both as well, of for a long time having values that were more or less subscribed to us, like that were given to us that aren't ours,
Hmm.
But yeah, man, you should jump in and we can edit each other's, and I'll share the full story of how Scott and I are conquering the world on the side.
Yeah, no, it sounds interesting for sure.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna eat some lunch.
Sounds good. Good to see you.
All right, super good. All right, that does it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about our online code school, Parsity, visit parsity.io, parsity.io. If you want to jump into 90 Days of Action, get yourself an accountability partner, and actually conquer the first quarter of 2023, go to 90daysofaction.com. That's the number 90daysofaction.com. You can register. Again, it costs $500 to register, but your partner is going to get their $250 back if you check in every week, and you'll get your $250 back if your partner checks in every week. So it's not that we're going to make money. In fact, we would succeed if we don't make money. It's that we want to bring you into a community where we accomplish big things for the new year. So check that out. We launch on January 16th. So you've basically got until the end of the year to get signed up. Hope you have a good rest of your week.